Hello and welcome! Today we're doing something a little different. We are going deep, really deep, into a single, incredibly powerful verse from the Qur'an. We're going to do a forensic level analysis to unpack the huge theological ideas packed into just a few words from Surah Maryam, verse 22. So here it is. So she conceived him, and she withdrew with him to a remote place. Now, at first glance, you might think, okay, seems pretty straightforward. It describes two key actions, right? The conception and then the withdrawal. But trust me, the exact meaning of these two actions, well, that's been the focus of some really intense theological discussion. And that's exactly what we're going to get into. And just so you know where we're coming from, our entire analysis is grounded in a modern, very detailed scholarly exegesis of the Qur'an, what's known as a tafsir. So this isn't just a casual reading. Oh no, this is a serious, rigorous investigation into the language and the theology of the text itself. It allows us to follow a specific, very carefully built theological argument. All right, let's break this down. We'll start with the very first part of the verse, the phrase that talks about the conception. Because, as you're about to see, the specific Arabic word used here is incredibly precise, and it carries a ton of theological weight. You know, it's amazing how sometimes the biggest ideas hinge on the smallest details. Our analysis kicks off with just a single letter. The verse begins with fahamalatu, so she conceived him. In Arabic, that little prefix fa is absolutely crucial. It signifies immediacy, a direct and instant consequence. The tafsir we're looking at argues that this is no accident. It's meant to tell us that the conception was instantaneous, a pure miracle. The second the divine will was announced, it happened. There was no waiting, no biological process, just a direct act of creation. Okay, so now we move on to the second part of the verse. And this, right here, is where we find the central mystery we're exploring, Mary's withdrawal. The text says she withdrew with him to a remote place. It sounds simple, but this one action has been the source of so much debate and interpretation. And that brings us to the core question, the one that our source really digs into with incredible detail. Why? Why did Mary go to a remote place? Was this a human, emotional reaction? Or was there something much, much bigger going on here? Now, a lot of the common interpretations you might hear, they tend to lean towards a very human explanation. You know, they suggest that Mary was scared. She was afraid of what people would say, the accusations she'd face. That maybe she was overwhelmed with a sense of shame or anxiety about this impossible pregnancy and basically ran away to escape being judged. These ideas all focus on her being in a state of personal distress. But, and this is a huge but, the tafsir we're analyzing offers a really powerful counterargument. It says her withdrawal wasn't an emotional reaction driven by fear or shame at all. Instead, it was an act of pure obedience. It was a direct response to a divine command. And that, well, that changes everything. Her action is completely reframed, not as an act of weakness, but as one of incredible strength and submission. So let's be super clear about what a divine command actually means in this context. It implies that Mary was specifically instructed to go into seclusion, and this had a twofold purpose. First, it was to protect the absolute sanctity of this miracle from a society that just wouldn't understand. And second, it was to prepare a wholly isolated space for the birth of Jesus. You see the difference? This was a purposeful, divinely guided mission, not some kind of panicked escape. Now, rethinking her withdrawal like this, it leads us straight into the absolute heart of the theological debate our source is presenting. And that debate is all about this. What was Mary's internal spiritual state of being during this unbelievable event? Was she anxious and worried, or was she calm and serene? And this table lays it out perfectly. You've got two completely opposing schools of thought. On one side, you have the view of itrab, that's distress. This view sees her as a deeply troubled young woman facing a terrifying social nightmare. But on the other side, you have the view of itminan, that's tranquility, submission. And this is the view our source champions. It argues that as the chosen person for such a profound miracle, Mary wasn't filled with anxiety. She was filled with a deep peace, a contentment, fully accepting God's plan. Her reaction wasn't just human, it was the reaction of a prophetess. The source just crystallizes its whole argument with this one powerful statement. The logic is just so clear. A miracle of this scale is a divine honor, a blessing. So it only makes sense that the state of the person receiving it would mirror the event itself. It would be a state of awe, of wonder, and even joy, not fear and agitation. To even suggest she was distressed, the source argues, is to actually diminish the spiritual rank of Mary and the sheer grandeur of the miracle. So, putting all these pieces together, what does this interpretation really tell us about the miracle itself? Because by taking a closer look at Mary's actions and her inner state, we actually get a much deeper, more profound understanding of the whole event. So let's just walk through the logical flow that this tafsir builds for us. It all starts with the immediate conception, which puts God's absolute power on full display. That's followed by a commanded seclusion, a strategic move to protect the miracle. And this move is carried out by Mary in a state of perfect tranquility and submission. So what's the result when you add it all up? A flawless, divinely orchestrated event, totally free from any hint of human weakness, doubt, or distress. And honestly, this is the ultimate takeaway. This reading of the verse isn't just a simple grammar lesson. It fundamentally changes how we understand Mary herself. She's transformed from a passive, maybe even scared victim of circumstance into a conscious, willing, and spiritually powerful participant in one of history's greatest miracles. She becomes an active agent in God's divine plan. So I'll leave you with this to really think about. This kind of meticulous, deep dive analysis of just a single verse can reveal layers of meaning that can totally shift our perspective. So how does seeing Mary not as a figure of distress, but as a figure of profound, tranquil faith, how does that enrich our understanding of her story and her absolutely central role in the divine narrative? Something to ponder.